Good morning, and thanks for taking time out. So just so you know, this is not one of those cool presentations about virtual reality, but it's actually about a very important part of your business if you're trying to grow or expand your digital sales, your e-commerce business. And we're going to be talking about the importance of a unified back-end piece of software that will help your business grow profitably. So there are a couple of preconceived notions that I have about the audience for this talk. The first one is that you're interested in successful e-commerce business growth. And the second thing is that by successful, we mean that you'd like to grow your sales, but you'd also like to do it ultimately on a profitable basis. So I've been in this business for many years, and I haven't found too many companies whose goal when they start their business is to be unprofitable and go out of business, and I'm assuming most of you don't fall into that category. So the idea is that many companies in the modern age are selling online, opening up an e-commerce site, a Shopify site, a Magento site, or you're selling on Amazon. So let's talk a little bit about these four companies that I've put up on the slide. What do they have in common? Any suggestions from the audience? Okay, I'll make it easy for you. For each one of these companies, if you want to buy any goods from them, you have more than one way of purchasing those goods. So, go back 30 years, you could walk into the Bay and you could buy clothing. Now you can still do that, but you can actually buy the clothing from the Bay online, right, on the e-commerce site. Same thing with Home Depot, and you see even Amazon is now dabbling with bricks and mortar stores. And the moral of the story is that more and more companies are finding out that you can be more profitable, grow fast, and be more successful if you sell through multiple channels. So the terminology, and you've actually probably seen it on a few of the booths, I've seen it on these 3 booths in this show, is omni-channel. So being able to reach your customers in multiple different ways, but more importantly, your customers are able to find you and purchase your products in multiple different ways. So according to Forbes magazine, the same company that sells to one customer who only buys one way, who only either walks into the store or buys online, versus another customer who does it both ways. This is fairly obvious, but the conclusion is that you generate around about 60% more revenue from the customer that buys on multiple channels. Over the lifetime of a customer relationship, a business will generate 30% more profit from customers who buy on multiple channels. So what this really tells me is that there's a very, very good chance that if you're going to be a successful e-commerce retailer, you're also going to be selling through multiple channels. Now, those channels may be an Amazon marketplace, they may be eBay, they may be multiple websites. As we skip forward to the next slide, you may be selling business to business. Maybe you're a wholesaler who's distributing to retail stores, but you're probably still going to start selling to those companies online as well. And you might start using third-party sites such as Shopify or the Costco marketplace to fulfill sales directly to their customers. So your customers are buying from you, but actually you're shipping directly to their customers. We've seen an increase in the convergence between business-to-business e-commerce and business-to-consumer e-commerce. So while you see a few little bullet points on the slide, be aware that more and more companies are moving from either strictly business-to-consumer e-commerce or B2B, business-to-business, to hybrid sites which are really B2all. So B2all is becoming kind of the next wave of wholesalers and distributors trying to leverage e-commerce and get their products out to more people in higher volumes. So what does all this mean? All this means is that as you grow and you break out these different channels, you're using different pieces of software, different online marketplaces, different websites, and different database platforms. So you're using what is called the omni-channel approach. What you're doing is you're storing some of your sales, or some of your sales are coming in off, let's say, your Magento or Shopify e-commerce platform. But some of your sales are going to be coming in off of Amazon. Some of them are going to be phoned in and you're going to be manually keying them into some piece of software. Maybe some of them are going to arrive by email. And of course, there's a whole lot of varieties there, variations there. Now, what are you going to do with all that information? How are you going to know what you have to do, how much inventory you have, when you should be purchasing and replenishing your inventory, when you've got some of the data on your Shopify backend, some of the data in spreadsheets that you download from Amazon, some of your data that you've manually keyed into QuickBooks, some of your data, actually a lot of your data that you've manually, or even with import and export, transposed into a number of Excel spreadsheets. And I've found very, very few companies, actually in any business, but particularly in the e-commerce business, that don't rely to some degree on Excel spreadsheets which are manually keyed. So let me just be clear, I have a bias here. I love Excel. I live in Excel all day long. I never, ever, ever key a single number into Excel. I pull the data directly from a central unified database, and then I can analyze and crunch the numbers and do whatever I want and create reports and charts and power pivots and power views and 3D maps of sales by location, by product class, but I don't key anything in. And the reason for that is because what we're using is the so-called back-end, this unified back-end. So again, let's just talk about the challenges that you face if you don't have a unified back-end, if you don't have all of your business data, all of it, the sales information, the inventory information, your purchasing parameters, your actual true costs of products, so therefore your profitability overall, your gross profit by individual products, and between that, your profitability by classes of products, by the marketplaces in which you sell them. If you don't have all that data, how do you grow effectively and how do you grow efficiently and profitably? And the answer is really you don't. Because what you probably do is you hire a few extra people to manually crunch all these numbers and move them back and forth into Excel, and the extra cost of doing that manually wipes out some of your profit margin. But even worse, when you're manually moving data around, key punch errors. How reliable is the data? And I've seen one company in particular grow very, very quickly from selling 5 SKUs with maybe 10 to 12 transactions a day through one little GoDaddy shopping cart to trying to fulfill 300 to 400 orders a day with about 30 SKUs by manually keying data and keyboard transpositions causing them to actually lose money and go out of business. So pure data entry errors. So if you're going to sell and if you're going to go through this omni-channel approach, which is more or less inevitable unless you have very niche products where you're the single source of supply, you're going to be able to succeed in selling. Hopefully, that's that first bubble on the slide. You're going to have to fulfill those sales, and just to sort of expand a little bit further on what I was saying, fulfilling those sales really, I mean, it's a complex process, but you can really break it down into 3 facets. Facet number 1 is, do you know what you have to ship? Are you able to pick, pack, and ship those orders on a timely basis? Number 2, do you actually have enough inventory to be able to fulfill those orders? Are you taking orders on Amazon that you actually cannot fulfill? And for any of you who sell on Amazon, you know that's a big no-no, right? But even worse, if you have business-to-consumer customers that are ordering off your website and not getting products shipped, guess what? Next time, they're going somewhere else. So therefore, you also need to know how much inventory you have, how much inventory you need, how long it takes you to procure that inventory from your suppliers, when to order from your suppliers, and how much to order. And, you know, I've also seen companies make the mistake of saying, well, because we don't have all that information, we're just going to stock up. We're going to make sure we always have enough inventory to fulfill all the orders. This is how you run into another problem, the problem of dead stock, where you end up throwing out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of inventory that's gone bad. One particular case which I was involved in an analysis with in, I was going to say last year, but actually in 2016. I keep forgetting that it's 2018 already. But we found that there were some SKUs that were worth about 160,000 US dollars, and they hadn't sold a single one of those for 7 years. But every year they would move them around the warehouse to free up space. They would count them as part of their inventory. That's a huge cost, so you don't want to do that either. So the bottom line is that you really want a unified back end, and that unified back end is typically called an ERP system. So don't worry too much about what ERP stands for if you don't know, but really it should be called Business Operations Management Software. So it makes no difference where your transactions are coming from. They should land up in that back-end software. That back-end software will be used to pick, pack, and process your orders, to figure out how to ship them, to place purchase orders, to figure out how many products you should be ordering. And essentially, at the end of the day, you're going to have a single source of information that's going to help you run your business effectively. How are you going to do that? Because you're still going to have your Shopify or Magento or whatever website. You're still going to be getting data from Amazon. There's still going to be all these silos of information, right? There's still going to be all these silos of data, and you cannot avoid them. You cannot eliminate them. But what you can do is you can do 2 things. First of all, you can integrate them. So you can make sure that all the pieces of software that you use and all the marketplaces and all the platforms that you work with are able to exchange data electronically. That's what integration means. They can send out data and they can receive data to and from your back-end ERP system. And that's all well and good, but integration is only part of the puzzle, because like a typical form of integration between e-commerce and any other system, particularly with the entry-level e-commerce systems, is to export a batch of transactions into a file and then bring the file over and then import it into some other software. That works, and that's good. That's much better than manually keying, but it is a manual process. It relies on a human being remembering to do something and doing it at the appropriate time. And it also means that there's a time lag between when the transactions actually happen and when the back end gets updated with those transactions. Vice versa. You update inventory in your back end, you wait until you export that data so that you can upload it to Amazon. There's a time delay between those two events as well. So the other part of this is automation. Ideally, you should be looking at integration with automation so that these things happen automatically. Someone places an order on your website, automatically your ERP system knows about it. Now, I'm just going to take another minute to give you an example of automation and integration with an actual Blue Link customer. But then, even better, I'm going to introduce Peter Smith, who's been sitting quietly and patiently on my left, who runs a company that is a Blue Link customer that has basically walked the walk. So everything that I've talked about, he's walked the walk, and he's going to share with you his experience and how he is building a very successful e-commerce driven company that is growing without adding unnecessary costs and running very, very lean. And also he also has very cool products, so the products themselves are going to be very interesting. So worth listening to me drone on for another minute just so that you can hear about Peter's products, I promise you. Okay, so the final thing, I'll just give you this little situation of automation. We have a customer, sorry Peter, you can stand up and sit down, no one will mind. Okay. We have a customer just here in the Toronto area in Mississauga who back in 3-4 years ago, when they didn't have unified integrated systems, was shipping out about 800 orders a day. They now do about 1,200 orders a day. And those orders were coming in from Amazon, from eBay, from the e-commerce site, from a showroom where people were keying in orders, from emailed orders that they were keying into their order entry system and via the phone. And every one of those orders needed to be looked at and reviewed and decided whether or not we could actually go ahead and release it to the warehouse because of the need to make sure that we don't overship products and things like that. So they had a battery of like 3 people whose full-time job was just to look at orders as they came in and then decide what to do with them and then do something with them. Well, automation in the ERP system has completely eliminated that. So now on a day when they have 1,200 orders, the ERP system triages those orders every 5 minutes, no matter where they come from. So this is all automatic. The orders fly in from Amazon, from their Magento web store, from other sources. Every 5 minutes, the ERP system does a little triage, looks at the orders, compares them to some predetermined criteria, use a little bit of fuzzy logic, and it basically decides which orders can simply be released to the warehouse. So on a day where there are 1,200 orders, more than 1,100 of those, the first time anyone in the organization even becomes aware of them is when the person in the warehouse, it shows up on his handheld device and he goes to pick the order and pack it and ship it. And many of those orders are out the door within 20 minutes of them landing in having been placed. And then you have one person who spends maybe an hour and a half a day looking at the other 60 or 70 that didn't make the cut and deciding what to do with those. And the other 2 people who are doing this full time, well, they're actually out there selling and improving the top line and also helping the bottom line of the company. But an even better story is going to be the story Peter will tell you, so here's Peter.
I started this company, Daneson, in 2011, and we make toothpicks. It's pretty simple. We just make really nice high-end toothpicks. Not many Canadians are familiar with us. We do about 99% of our business in the United States. Well, between the United States and Asia. We do probably less than 1% in Canada. And one of the reasons why we can do that is because of Blue Link. I came up with this idea in 2011. We started selling in earnest in about 2013. We got Blue Link going, I think, in around 2014 because we realized we had a lot of problems with being a Canadian business and trying to sell internationally. And we now have probably more than 1,000 retailers around the world. We have a really robust direct-to-consumer business. I think my business was Shop 700 with Shopify, so we're one of Shopify's very first stores. And the story with us is, as a Canadian business, and we're manufacturers, we actually make these things. We had the dilemma of which a lot of Canadian businesses face, which is there's 30 million people in Canada who sort of like to buy things, and then about an hour and a half down the road, there's 330 million people who love buying things. And the cost of shipping in Canada is about 8 times more expensive than it is an hour and a half down the road. And so we had this really big dilemma where we were an early Shopify store, but we had no way of fulfilling orders affordably. And so we had to figure out how to get inventory outside of Canada so we could fulfill and ship things for like $1.65 versus $16. Literally, that is the price difference we're talking about with shipping one of these in Toronto versus, so it's about $14-16 if you walk in off the street and go to like Canada Post and you want to send this from like Yonge and Bloor to Bloor or Yonge and Front Street. I can send this anywhere in the United States for $1.65 and 3 to 5 business days with tracking. But so long story short, this shipping dilemma, plus the fact that Xero and QuickBooks don't really do FX very well, they don't do inventory really at all, they don't do manufacturing, they don't do lot tracking, they don't do anything that you need as really a business owner outside the United States. We had to find a new platform. I learned this acronym, Mark mentioned ERP, which means Enterprise Resource Planning, that sort of sent me on this rabbit hole of sort of a hell search trying to find a good ERP system. Because really the ERP systems out there that people use are things like SAP and NetSuite, but they cost like literally a small fortune. Like we would have to done a round of financing just to set up a system to be able to function in the market and sell product. So we came across Blue Link, and what that let me do was have a system that could speak to 3PLs down in the States. And now we have 3PLs in like Shanghai, Hong Kong, the Netherlands, New Jersey, I'm missing one, but we've got them everywhere now. So let us do that. It let us function in whatever currency we wanted to function in. It allowed us to build a product so we could build what's essentially like a finished good is an assembly. It's all these like individual parts that get pulled together and made into like something you can sell. So we can track everything from if we buy like a 55-gallon drum of cinnamon oil, this goes like, Blue Link goes to, I can't remember, like 9 or 12 decimal places, so I can convert that into like point whatever milliliters of cinnamon flavoring that goes into like one toothpick, because each individual toothpick is an assembly. So we came across Blue Link, and they kind of facilitated this whole thing. And to sort of take a step forward, we now, like Mark says, we have this system where we have orders coming in off of a retail Shopify store. We have a B2B Shopify store. These orders come in, and well, actually, I wanted to talk about like the first day. Like we kind of had Blue Link going. It was Christmas time. It was usually like a pandemonium time of year where we just, worked 12, 14 hours a day, just printing orders and getting them ready to get at the door. And it was just so nice because we just open up a list and click ship. And we did that, I don't know, however many times. We review every order still, but like Mark was saying, you can have it all happen automatically. We just like having that extra check. And so that's still the case now. We get like our orders, we open our sales order screen, we can see everything. Take that one step further. We can then look at like our sales history, look at our current inventory, so we look at what we have, what we think we have, where are things, so we can show inventory if it's in transit, and then click a button, bam, it reorders, given to whatever equation we want to have. If we're going to grow 25, 50, 100%, it will reorder all the way down to that base assembly level, which is just amazing. Like that's something like myself and my financial controller would almost have like every day a spreadsheet where we're working on numbers trying to figure out what we need and how much of it and where is it and all that stuff. It's now entirely automated and takes like maybe 2 hours, and most of that 2 hours is just, second guessing yourself and checking your own logic in terms of what's happening and not really having anything to do with Blue Link whatsoever. So yeah, I mean, that's what we have, and that's where we went. I mean, honestly, like, I don't think any business can be taken seriously without an ERP system. We're here at like a marketing conference. The Blue Link and like having an ERP system behind us was a massive, massive game changer with every retailer. Like in the States, we sell to like J. Crew, we sell to Dean and DeLuca, which is like one of the top gourmet grocery stores in the US. We sell to Restoration Hardware. All of those companies, Pottery Barn, like we have all these companies. We would go to a trade show, we'd get them on the phone, and once we mention we have an ERP system, they know we're legit. They just know that they can buy from us and we can deliver. If you don't have that, they just think like, oh my gosh, like here's like a really cool product, awesome, but can they deliver? Do they have any of the back end? Do they understand anything that works with it? Because we have a ERP system, it shows we have a really robust system in place. We take their orders super seriously, and it lets us do things. Oh, and another thing I should say, Shopify is amazing. Like, I adore Shopify. On the B2C side, it's great. On the B2B side, it's pretty good too, but like, you can't use one of those Shopify fulfillment houses that integrates directly with Shopify. Simply put, because they're not designed to ship wholesale orders. They don't know, like, every retailer has its own, like, literally we have a shelf of binders where there's vendor supply agreements. They want to have, like, almost down to, like, their particular font on shipping labels and stuff like that, and you have no choice but to do that. And those sort of businesses that are streamlined for Shopify can't do that. They're just not designed to do it. Shopify is for shipping commodity products, zero sort of customer service. When you're shipping wholesale, it's all about customer service. There's one last thing I wanted to mention that I think was really important. The big retailers want to see EDI. So that's essentially when Walmart has like their ERP system will run like calculations, be like, okay, hey, we're short on toothpicks. It doesn't tell the buyer, go call this company, buy more toothpicks. The system just wants to talk from its system to your system, place an order, and then see that's going to be fulfilled. And Blue Link also does EDI, which is a huge win if you're trying to buy retailers. Oh, and the last point I wanted to say is, as marketers, for us, like, the spend on Blue Link was really a valuable marketing expense because we could win these wholesale accounts, and with those wholesale accounts, you actually get eyeballs every day. Versus if we're selling or marketing through Facebook, what have you, it's fractions of a second. Yeah, it's actually still, I think, a very meaningful channel to sort of keep the ball rolling and keep things visible. Anyways, that's all for me.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks very much for attending, everyone.